Okay, everyone. This is a re-recording of part one of becoming a master colorist. I've had to re-record it because the original was just lost. It disappeared into the ether somehow. So, first of all, this is my cell phone number, and I answer all color questions, regardless of the color that you use. Once you've watched one of my webinars, I will do my best to answer any questions that you have concerning hair color. If you want to send me an email, send it to me at tom@worldwidehaircoloristassociation.org. Here we go. Becoming a master colorist. Becoming a master colorist requires an understanding of many different factors, and the color line is just one. A colorist must understand not only the chemical aspects of a formula, but must also understand the relationship of the formula to the hair. And the reason I say this is because no two heads react the same to a color formula, because eye color, skin tone, hair texture, and ethnic origin are all important to a formula. And when I say ethnic origin, it has more than one application to a formula, because two people, three people from the same background can still have different reactions to a color formula. Now, not everyone who is a master colorist has a certificate on the wall. And I've said this before, not everyone who's called a master colorist deserves the title. Just because you know how a color line works does not make you a master colorist. To be a master colorist, a true master colorist, you must be able to adapt to any color line and create beautiful results. I understand that there are a lot of people who have the title master colorist, and they took a test for it, and they showed their hair coloring skills. And I suggest that your coloring skills and application are just one very small part. And there is much, much more to being a true master colorist. Hopefully, we will help you obtain that goal. Now, there's an immense amount of bad information about coloring hair. And the internet is a major source of this bad information. I am appalled and offended at the bad information circulating about coloring hair on the internet. I'm astounded that people follow this bad advice. So be very careful of internet information. So let's actually start the webinar right now. Becoming a Master Colorist, Part 1. We're going to talk about eye color and its relationship to coloring hair. We're going to talk about skin, depth and tone, and its relationship to lightening. And we're going to speak about or talk about hair texture and its relationship to formula creation and brassiness. So let's start with eye colors. First of all, blue, green, and brown. Almost everybody's eye color falls into one of these three groups. I understand that there are hazel eyes, and there are blue-green eyes, and there are golden eyes. I understand all of this, but the majority of people in the world fall into either the blue, the green, or the brown category. And I put this picture up for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is the iris of the eye. This is the part that we're concerned with when we look at the eye. And this is what will give us an indication as to what's going to happen. I have also written vitreous gel here. And vitreous gel is what is inside of your eyeball in this part right here. And the reason it's important is because it bends light, because that bent light is what allows us to think that we're seeing blue eyes. First of all, blue eyes contain a very small amount of eumelanin, and it's found on the back of the iris. So let me go back again. Remember, this is the iris. On the back side of it is where you have a very small amount of eumelanin, which is the same melanin, by the way, that gives you hair color and skin tone. It's there it is. This is the same eumelanin that creates hair and skin color. Now, generally, people with blue eyes have the easiest hair to lighten or change. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, and the exception is when you have gold ring or gold flecks. Let me go back. Whoops. Now, remember this? Sometimes there's a ring around the eye. We see this ring here, and it's actually an overlapping of the back of the iris coming over the front. And if this has a golden ring, or there are a whole bunch of gold flecks in the eye, this is when you have to be cautious, because this indicates something differently. And it indicates that hidden in the hair, whoops, yeah, hidden in the hair, there's probably pheomelanin, which is the red melanin, or red gold melanin, or yellow melanin, even though you don't see it, particularly in blondes. It's hidden in the hair. And this is why sometimes when you lighten a blonde, you see a tremendous amount of brassiness appear for no reason, or no reason that you're aware of. Now, whoops, it jumped ahead again. Blue eyes. 8% of the world population has blue eyes, but in the United States, there's 27% of the people in the United States have blue eyes, much higher than the worldwide amount. Now, originally, everyone had brown eyes, but about anywhere from 6 to 10,000 years ago, there was a mutation in one person, and that mutation is what led to blue eyes. Now, most likely, all blue-eyed people in the entire world are related if you go back thousands of years. Now, interestingly, most blue-eyed people are found in nationalities in Northern Europe. That means the Nordic countries, the Germanic countries, all of those things in Northern Europe. And even though there are, for instance, I'm from Sicily. My family is from Sicily. And although we have blue eyes in my family, it's because the Nordic people invaded Sicily, and that's where we got our blue eyes from when they conquered and invaded Sicily. Now, green eyes are blue eyes, but they have a little bit more melanin, more eumelanin on the front of the iris. And it contains a second pigment called lipochrome. Lipochrome is a yellow or yellow-brown pigment. And when you mix yellow and blue together, you see green. And that's why we see green eyes. I forgot to tell you something about green eyes, and that is, um, excuse me, blue eyes. And that was the reason that the eyes are blue is because the light, when it's bent, we see blue. For instance, when you look at the sky is not blue, but what we're seeing is rays of the sun that have been bent by our atmosphere, and we see the color blue. We also refer to the deep blue ocean. Water is not blue, but it appears that way because the rays of the sun are bent by the water, and consequently we see the color blue. Same thing happens with our eyes. Remember I said there was a viscous a liquid inside of the eyeball? Well, it bends the light, and that's why we see the color blue. Now, remember what I just said now about green eyes are really blue eyes that contain a separate lipochrome, which is a yellow or yellow-brown pigment. Now, this is another example of green-eyed people having hidden pheomelanin. Once again, because of the lipochrome, it's not because of lipochrome that they have hidden pheomelanin, but pheomelanin is often hidden in the hair when we don't see it, regardless of whether they are brunettes or blondes. In either case, when we lighten the hair or bleach the hair, we see a lot of brassiness appear. Now, in green eyes are the least of the eye colors of the world. Only 2% of all of the population of the world have green eyes, but in the United States, it's 9%. Now, most green-eyed people are found in Ireland, Scotland, and Northern Europe. 85% of people in Ireland and Scotland have blue or green eyes. I love statistics. Now, brown-eyed people are another case altogether, because look at this, worldwide, 79% of the population have brown eyes. But in the United States, this is the only statistic that's lower in the United States. Only 45% of the people in the United States have brown eyes. Now, brown eyes contain a much larger amount of eumelanin on both the front and back of the iris. And the darker the darker brown eye you have, the more difficult to lighten the natural color. This means that if I have 3 people lined up and they all have identical light brown or brown hair and identical texture, but they have different depths of brown eye, the person with the brownest eye will be the one who is the most difficult to lighten. Also, the darker the brown of the eye, the larger the pigment granule inside the hair. Now, hazel eyes, which are green-brown eyes, is when you have to be very, very careful of red pigment hidden in the hair, or even when you have warm brown hair. Now, skin tone and depth. The depth of the skin color is an indicator of the lightest the hair can be safely bleached. And when I say safely bleached, I mean the lightest the hair can be bleached before we start destroying the internal structure of the hair, and the hair starts becoming cotton candy like and pulls apart. The natural protein that holds one single strand of hair together is yellow. Um, your hair is not one single strand. There's actually millions of fibrils of hair that are held together by a protein, and that protein is yellow. It's a protein, but it acts as if it were a glue. It's where you find the disulfide bonds that hold hair structure together. The darker the skin, the darker the yellow. That's why not everyone can be bleached to pale yellow. If you have darker skin, let's say that a person from India, and some Indians have very, very dark skin. If you bleach that person's hair with the very dark skin, you can get it up to a yellow or a mustard yellow color. But if you go beyond that, that's when the hair starts falling apart because you're no longer bleaching pigment out of the hair. You've gotten all the pigment out of the hair. Instead, what's happening is you're destroying the actual protein, the glue that holds the hair together. Here's an example of two strands of hair that I bleached. The one on the left was European, and the one on the right was Indian hair. And you'll notice that they were both, to begin with, they were both a dark brown color, medium to dark brown. And I lightened them both till all the pigment was gone. And you can see that the European hair is more yellow, whereas the hair from India, because of the very dark skin of that person, is more mustardy, yellowy in color. So skin depth is directly related to the depth of the yellow protein, the glue that holds the strand together, when all the pigment is removed from the hair. Now, texture. The depth of hair color is directly proportional to the texture of the hair. The concentration of the pigment in the hair determines the depth. Let me repeat those two things. The depth of hair color is directly proportional to the texture of the hair when you have the same concentration of pigment in fine, medium, and coarse hair. In order for fine, medium, and coarse hair to have the same depth, they require different amounts of melanin. So let me show you what I mean. Now, these three beakers represent coarse, medium, and fine textured hair. And what I did was I put real eumelanin, black melanin, in all three beakers. I have access, because I manufacture hair color, I have access to melanin. And what I've done here is I put the identical amount of melanin in all three beakers. And you can see that the coarsest hair is much lighter than the finest hair. And represented below is what happens when you have coarse, medium, and fine textured hair, but you have the identical number of melanin in each one. Because the hair is so much larger, it appears lighter because of all of the rest of the hair where the pigment does not appear. Now, whenever you have finer textured hair, generally it means you can use less processing time. So this is when you have a 30 to 35 minute processing time for finer textured hair. Often you can use lower volume developer. Even for gray coverage, you can use 10 volume, providing the hair is finer textured. Plus, sometimes you need lighter shade formulation when you have finer textured hair, because so much dye is absorbed into the hair that you can sometimes end up darker than you anticipate. Plus, it is the easiest, finer textured hair is the easiest of all hair textures to damage. When you have coarser textured hair, you tend to need longer processing time. Longer processing time means the 40 or 45 minutes that we go for medium and coarser textured hair. Sometimes you have to use higher volume of developer, particularly when you're doing brighter shades, and sometimes you need a heavier concentration of dye in order to get the level that you anticipate, because the hair is so coarse. So all three of those factors are particularly important for coarser textured hair. Now, coarser textured hair and contributing pigment. The coarser the texture of the hair, the brassier it appears when lightened. Now, if all three of these strands of hair were identical color to begin with, and now I'm talking about fine, medium, and coarse hair. If they were all identical before we began, let's say they were all medium to dark brown, and then we lightened them all the same amount, the coarsest textured hair will always look the brassiness. Why? Because it has the most eumelanin or hair color in it. And it also influences your choice of whatever color or tone you're going to put on the hair, because coarse textured hair requires a formula that is more ashy than fine or medium textured hair in order to get the same type of result. So consequently, if I were going to do, if I wanted to make this medium textured hair lighter by a couple of levels, I would use 20 or 30 volume developer on the coarse hair, but I would only use possibly 10 or 20 depending on the fine hair. But I would use neutral plus green concentrate, because there's much less brassiness in this hair to compensate. Whereas in the medium textured hair, I'd probably use blue-green because it has more brassiness. And then in the coarse textured hair, I would probably use blue plus neutral, because I would need the ashiest results to neutralize that tone. Sorry about my phone. Let's go to the next slide. Now remember that texture varies by ethnic background. And notice I've written here Asia, and then I wrote China, Japan, Thailand, Philippines. Now there are many more countries in the Asia Pacific area, but I just chose these four just off the top of my head. And each of them reacts differently to hair color. The hair that's the most difficult to change is generally Japanese hair, and very close, if not equal to that, is Philippine hair, native Filipinos. However, Chinese hair and Thai hair is often very much easier to change. So consequently, you never have the same result from any of the different countries of the Asian continent. But Middle Eastern is another group all to itself. Middle Eastern hair is sometimes extremely difficult to both bleach and to make lighter shades. And I'm including countries like Iraq and Iran, Persia, um, all of those countries of the Middle East, the Northern Africa, Middle Eastern countries. And generally, if you are native to those countries, you have very dark hair and generally dark brown, medium to dark brown eyes. Consequently, a lot of difficulty lightening that hair. Very, very difficult to make them platinum or silver blondes. European and Northern European hair are the easiest to change. And then because of both the blue eyes, the blue and green eyes, and they also tend to have finer and medium textured hair, whereas Middle Eastern countries tend to have much coarser hair. South American natives, native hair and mixed hair are very different. If you go to South America and you go to, for instance, native Guatemala, very difficult to change. Native Mexicans, very difficult to change. However, when you have the European influence in South American hair, they're much easier to change. The hair tends to be a medium textured, medium and finer textured, and has a lot of European influence, and therefore is easier to change. African and Caribbean hair are fascinating in another way. I have never been to Africa. It's the only continent I've never been to. Wait a minute. One of the poles is also a continent. I haven't been to that one, but I have not been to Africa. But I know that African and Caribbean hair can be difficult to lighten. And now, particularly Caribbean hair. I once tried to color black, the color black, a Caribbean woman from Jamaica. She had salt and pepper hair, and she wanted me to cover the white hair with black, her natural color. But she warned me in advance. She said many, many people had tried, but no one has been able to color her hair. Well, I said, of course I could. I simply used black hair color. I mixed it with a 20 volume developer. I applied it to her hair. I left it on 45 minutes. And when I rinsed it off, nothing, not one single white hair was covered. I have no idea why. To this day, I still do not know why her hair was so resistant to hair color. I can guess, but it's not an intelligent guess. Whereas African hair or African American hair, which is the one I'm most familiar with, can be lightened, can be bleached, can be colored, both in its virgin state and once it's been relaxed. And it's just that relaxed hair reacts with much lower volume of developer. So where you would use 20 volume developer on African hair that is not relaxed, you would only need 10 volume on African hair that is relaxed. Oh, this is my latest book. It's the newest one I've written. If you want to purchase this book, go to tomdispenza.com. It's available there. If you're in the United States, if you're outside of the United States, you must purchase it on Amazon.com. Because every book that I've ever sent outside of the United States has been lost or stolen. So I don't ship outside the United States now, but Amazon, you can get the book through Amazon. Last but not least, becoming a master colorist. Becoming a master colorist is a four-part program. Um, the first part is reviewing all 9 of the Master Colorist videos. This is the first one out of a collection of 9. They will all be up on the Worldwide Hair Colorist site, and everyone who tuned into this will have access to the site, assuming that I have your email address. Step number 2 requires that you take a Master Colorist written test, but you can't do that until you've reviewed all 9 of the Master Colorist videos. Now, the Master Colorist written test requires a 90% passing grade. If you get less than 90%, you must retake the test. I have 4 different versions of it. You'll retake the test and attempt to pass it on a second time. The third step, after you've passed the written test with a 90% grade, the third step is to submit a complete makeover. This is with photos, and the makeover is not just a gray touch-up, but it's a makeover of a client who either you do combination services on, you do a correction on, your choice, but it's a complete makeover of a client. And step 4 is to complete an oral on-the-spot quiz, and it's generally about a half an hour. We speak on the phone, and it's as simple as that. Complete on-the-spot quiz. That's it. So once again, I want to say thank you, and that's the end of this webinar. Thank you.